Welcome to Conversations with Big Rich. This is an interview-style podcast. These interviewed are all involved in the off-road industry. Being involved, like all of my guests are, is a lifestyle, not just a job. I talk to past, present, and future legends, as well as business owners, employees, media, and land use warriors. Men and women who have found their way into this exciting and addictive lifestyle we call off-road. We discuss their personal history, struggles, successes, and reboots. We dive into what drives them to stay active in off-road. We all hope to shed some light on how to find a path into this world that we live and love and call off-road.
Whether you're crawling the Red Rocks of Moab or hauling your toys to the trail, Maxxis has the tires you can trust for performance and durability. 4 wheels or 2. Maxxis tires are the choice of champions because they know that whether for work or play, for fun or competition, Maxxis tires deliver. Choose Maxxis. Tread victoriously.
Have you seen 4Low magazine yet? 4Low magazine is a high-quality, well-written, four-wheel drive-focused magazine for the enthusiast market. If you still love the idea of a printed magazine, something to save and read at any time, 4Low is the magazine for you. 4Low cannot be found in stores, but you can have it delivered to your home or place of business. Visit 4lowmagazine.com to order your subscription today. On today's episode of Conversations with Big Rich, we have Travis C. Bunch. We're going to find out about the C. We're also going to find out about periodical book that he's been putting out and him walking away from 20 plus years as a mechanic in 2020 and going full head into his book and the periodical book, I have to remind everybody, and that's Flat Fendering Aficionado. And he also runs flatfendering.com and has a bunch of a product there that you can look at or purchase, not look at. Go ahead and buy, man. Keep this guy going. Anyway, Travis, thank you so much for coming on board and spending some time with us and telling some stories.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad to have the chance.
So let's start way back in the beginning. Where were you born and raised?
Yeah, I was born and raised in the Lake of the Ozarks, and it's basically an industrial tourism hotspot if you don't know where that is and what goes on there. But it's a lot like Moab. It's a little farther ahead in their tourism, but it's feast or famine there. And a lot of times I ended up doing a lot of mechanic work in different fields there. But it's really similar to where we're at, just a little different climate. Yeah. And different types of people that come and recreate and different things to do, but
right. The humidity is a lot different.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. You hardly have to drink water. You soak it up through your skin as osmosis.
There you go. So what town did you live in around the Lake of the Ozarks?
The town, usually it was a couple different ones. Camdenton, Missouri, was one. And then we have a horse farm out in Montreal, Missouri.
Okay.
So grew up on a horse farm, which a lot of people would see me today and never think that. But that also gave me the love of getting out on the trail early on, and the adrenaline rush of climbing things that you're not sure if you're going to be able to make or not. It's real similar to four-wheeling, but I got tired of getting thrown off of horses, and with a Jeep or whatever, you can turn it off when you're getting over your head, where you can't with a horse.
Yeah, my dad says that he'll never ride a horse because it doesn't have a key.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So let's talk about those early horse years. Were you, did you have a lot of chores, feeding and mucking stalls, things like that?
Oh, yeah. It was a daily type of deal around there. Towards my teenage years, I didn't really do as much of it anymore. I stepped out on my own, did a lot of working a lot. As soon as I got my driver's license, it was all the ranch stuff was over with. I was, couldn't be stopped and was out on the road all the time.
Right. I think that happened to a lot of us. I'm a product of, I got my driver's license in the early 70s, and I remember, man, I was just chomping at the bit. I already had a car. I'd already worked on it, had it running, was doing what I wanted to do, except I
Yeah,
couldn't drive it to school. I
right.
mean, it was just, and school was not that far for me either. I grew up in a fairly large town of about 50,000 people. But it was, as soon as I got that driver's license, everything else I was doing came to a standstill.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's, it's freedom.
Yep.
You get out and you were grown up all of a sudden, in your eyes. And that, like I said, that started a whole infatuation with cars across the board, not just four-wheel drives. And, a good part of that is going over to friends' house and out in their garage, their dads had Carcraft and Hot Rod and all those things laid out on the bench, and you go through, pour through all that stuff and dream about, what your next move was going to be.
Right. So, what was the school like for you? Was it easy, or what kind of student were you?
Uh, I don't know. Some things came easy for sure. A lot of people ask me, like, how do you get to where you could, you don't look like you'd be much of a writer or have, any kind of English training or anything like that for writing. And, what it was I just kept failing English over and over every year. So I was always in that class, and it finally was like beat into my brain that this is how you talk and write.
Yeah, I got through all my English requirements by being the photography editor on the yearbook staff.
Yeah, perfect.
I didn't have
Perfect.
to write a damn thing.
Exactly. Yeah. And then, got into Votech, in the auto stuff, auto mechanics training classes, and kind of went from there. And I thought to myself, I can really save myself a lot of money by not paying all these mechanics to work on their stuff, and I can modify my own vehicles. So that's kind of where I stepped into mechanics world right there. And that was the only reason, was just to have more for less.
Well, and besides being working on the ranch and taking care of horses and stuff, what what other kind of as soon as you could, what other employment did you start off with?
In that area, there's so many restaurants and bars all over the entire lake area. It was really easy to get into, the food service and whatnot. So a lot of times I worked in food service in kitchens, and that was bounce around and do different things all the time, which it's really nice as a poor teenager trying to buy, speed parts and gas. Hey, you can eat free dinner, whenever you get done or have a break at the kitchen, wherever you're working. So
That's
that was a big advantage too, of being a teen with a limited budget.
Yeah, I can imagine so. And so from working in the restaurants, and then you were taking the vocational classes and
Yeah.
auto tech classes. When did that change over to where you started? After the restaurants, what did you do?
That was moved right into working at the, car lots. So being a detail guy, and then doing little tiny light mechanic work, running cars back and forth from the car lot to the big dealer auctions and stuff that were, 3 hours away in St. Louis or Kansas City or Springfield, Missouri. So that was, of course, right there with what you always want to do as a teenager, is drive, Corvettes or Mustangs and stuff back and forth to the auction by, half unsupervised. You're kind of supervised, but then you get to play with all these cars that you don't get to afford, or maybe wouldn't really buy, but like to go for a, daily cruise in them.
There you go. I had a job where I worked as when I was 14. I was working as a shop boy, you might say, cleaning
Yeah,
up and organizing parts and all that kind of stuff, and doing some stereo installs. This is back in the early 70s, when no car dealerships, they didn't come with, they came with an AM radio.
sure.
They didn't come with, a lot of cars didn't come with air conditioning. So we
Yep.
did aftermarket air conditioning and stereo installs, and all sorts of that kind of stuff for the
Yeah.
dealers, or for people that had already bought their cars and bought them stock and then wanted them upgraded. But we also did motorhomes. So at 16, the boss said, "Okay, you get to drive now, and you get to drop off clients and pick them up and get them back to their car and get them back to work, whatever. But now you got to go drive this motorhome." And it was the first time it was a Class A, I don't know, a Winnebago or something that was like 40 foot long.
Sure.
And they first of all, they told me, okay, it's in the lot. You're going to, it's this number. Here are the keys. Take it. And I get out there and I find it finally. And there is like no room to open the door and get in the damn thing. And, I was 16. I wasn't real big. I was probably 5'9" and, 170 pounds or something like that. But it was like,
sure.
How in the heck am I getting in there? Figured it out, drove it for the first time in traffic in this San Francisco Bay Area. And I was just like, what am I doing? I've had my license for like 3 days and driving a 40-foot motorhome. Well, it's a good training, I guess.
Yeah, no, that's a wild ride for a youngster, for sure. Absolutely. It had been quite a while until I'd gotten to where I could drive something that big, even just an opportunity other than just a 1-ton truck,
I have to say the coolest car that I got to drive back then was a Jensen Interceptor with the 455.
Oh, yeah, that's good stuff.
That
Absolutely.
was a bad car, especially back in those days.
Absolutely. Yeah, we had some little kit cars and stuff like that at the specialty car lot I worked at. And it was some of those stuff was, it was dangerous for sure.
Right. So what was your first car?
My first car was a typical 90s kid car. It was because I, it was 95 was when I got my driver's license. So I had a 83 Z28, didn't have T-tops or anything like that. A wore out 350 and an automatic in it, barely turned the tires, but man, it was the coolest thing I've had, at the time that I could find. So
was it gold?
No, it wasn't gold. Actually, it was a silver one.
Silver, okay.
Silver with like a charcoal interior in it, but it didn't last that long. I think I had it about 6 months and flipped it up on its lid, and that was the end of that Camaro. that kind of stuff just doesn't even stop to this day. So still playing like that. But
so
I think I've had over 62 cars so far. And
wow.
Around 30 of them have been Jeeps. So a lot of Jeeps, but a lot of different makes and models of stuff. I'm really across the board with what interests me.
Right. You're not brand specific.
Absolutely not. No, I'm a realist when it comes to that. And I mean, all this stuff is junk. So all you need to do is pick whatever thing you like to look at is pretty much it.
I can remember going to Moab and meeting Marlon, and he from Marlon Crawler, and it was during the Toyota, whatever they do there in Moab, and what did they call it? And we had just bought an 84 Series 60 Toyota.
Cool.
And it was all bone stock, and I mean stock to the point where we killed it like later that year or the next year with 412,000 miles on it.
Wow.
The tie rod ends were held together with like hose clamps, the alligator type clamps, and it's sitting in the driveway right now because my wife Shelley wants to rebuild the motor. So that's the next thing on the list here in the next month or so is I'm going to pull the hood off of that, and we're going to pull the engine, and then she's going to go step by step and get a chance to rebuild a motor. But I can remember seeing Marlon, and we walk up to the vendor show, and he goes, "Rich, you're a Jeep guy. What are you doing here?" And I looked at him and said,
Right.
Marlon, I've never been brand specific. I drive a Toyota now. And his eyes got really big, and I was expecting him to say, "What, did hell just freeze over or something?" But that's
sure.
I've owned I think just about every brand of vehicle that American made at one time or another. So what was the favorite car you ever had that you wish you had back?
And that's a really tough question. In a car, and it's actually almost kind of unattainable anymore. I never thought it would be. It's probably the 71 Chevelle that I had in high school. And that was it was kind of a beater, but it had a really hot 355 in it with solid lifters and a single plane intake, big carburetor, 3-speed converted to the floor that just had the wrong gear ratio. But, it was a really fun car to drive.
And
Nowadays, I mean, you can't hardly get into one of those anymore for 15 grand for a piece of junk.
blue?
No, this one was red. It was
Wow.
red it did have it had a blue turn signal housing on one side. That's funny you say blue, but yeah. Yep. It had a terrible paint job on it. Just looked like a sack of potatoes. Had slot mags on the back and Kragers on the front, and it was something to behold.
Nice. Was it a chick magnet?
That one, yeah, kind of, not really. I don't know. It's kind of in that year, everybody liked, the 90s stuff like Fox Body Mustangs and, all those kind of Jeeps, Wranglers, everybody they had Jeeps, those were the chick magnets. You could throw the top down and cruise the strip, which is like kind of like a Coney Island kind of spot at the Lake of the Ozarks. So we'd cruise that every night, and look at everybody and, do burnouts and try to pop wheelies and our stuff and be hooligans, But,
Right.
yeah, the old junker muscle car that was super fast and loud was kind of scary. So no, nobody was trying to get in that thing with me, except for the boys. That's for sure. And they still talk about that to this day, about back in the day cruising in the old Chevelle. Between that and I had a 89 Florida Highway Patrol Mustang marked car. And that was another one that's the tie between the Chevelle.
Okay. And did that have the police brakes and the police tires and the police engine?
Exactly. Absolutely. Yep. Set up just like the Bluesmobile. Absolutely.
That's awesome. And
Yeah.
the thing scooted pretty good then with that Interceptor motor, right?
Yeah. And it was an open highway car. So it had the higher gear ratio. It had like the 272 or something like that in the back. So you could just really run out each gear in it and make it seem like it was a lot faster than it was, for sure. Donuts, that thing it would lay them down like a tilt-a-whirl at the carnival. It was amazing.
So, I know you're married. When did you meet your wife?
Like 2004 or so, something like that. Yeah, we've been married and together, married 18 years, together around 20. So
Okay.
she's a car gal. So it's funny, we have always way too many cars all the time, but she gets really sentimental with these things and then demands that I never sell them. So I can't argue with that. So we just end up having tons of cars all the time. So when we first got together, she had a 65 Mustang Fastback, 289 automatic, red, black interior. It was a really neat car. So I had that, and I had the cop car at that time. So we were a Mustang couple.
Nice. And where did you meet her at?
Just she lived in the same neighborhood as I did, and we'd of course see each other driving around in our classic cars. And she worked at a resale thrift shop too that I would go to and go picking for, antiques and vintage clothes and whatnot. So we always had a relationship there too.
Was that in Missouri?
Camdenton, yep.
Okay. And from Missouri, where did you guys end up? What was your next stop?
We went straight to Moab. We traveled around quite a bit, like to the Caribbean and all around the U.S. And one day we made it out there with a new Wrangler that we ended up with. Not new, but new to us, it was a 99 TJ. And finally we had something reliable enough we could drive across country and go wheeling and come back. So that's when we started coming out here and deciding that was where we needed to be. But we got 2 kids and they're both close to the same age. And as soon as those guys graduated high school, at their home schools, we went ahead and took off. So that was our getaway time.
Interesting. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. And so how long you've been in Moab now?
Been here around 5 years.
5 years. Okay.
Yeah.
For some reason, I thought you had a stop in Arizona.
Now that's actually more recent. Yeah, we've been talking. I mean, it's so hard to live in Moab unless you're either independently wealthy or you work 5 jobs or you have, 1 or 2 very successful jobs. And so
Right.
we've since 2020, we've been looking for somewhere that was, some kind of affordable at all, and still remote and whatnot. And we settled on northern Arizona near Sholo. So we bought a little acreage down there, and eventually maybe we'll be able to retire down there after we get run out of Moab.
Nice. Okay. And you're living. Shelley and I have lived the last. Well, when I bought the Taj Mahal, or the semi truck, which is converted into an RV, bought that in 2010 from Rick Dermo down in Dove Creek, and we started living in that in 2011 full time.
Yeah.
And traveling the country, putting on the events, and then that's why we developed not only We Rock, but then we expanded and did the Dirt Riot races so that we could just stay on the road. And
yeah, absolutely.
Now we're not spending as much time in the semi truck, but what's you're living in you guys are living in a school bus, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a 1959 Chevrolet. It's about a 30-footer. I don't remember how many seats would have been in it at that time. That's usually how people, will describe how big their bus is.
Right.
But ours was converted to an RV back sometime, I can tell, in the 60s. So, I mean, it wasn't really that old, and somebody converted it to a really nice RV. And, we found it in Moab, dying in the dust. So we scraped all the nastiness out of it and have been turning it into a pretty nice little tiny home now.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I don't mind living small.
I really got to like it. We've been living small for quite a few years now. And, it's good. It's good. I don't like having all the stuff. I don't need the stuff.
Right.
That's all the house is for, is to accumulate more stuff. Pretty sure George Carlin did a bit about that.
Right. And it's, everybody always says, the guy who ends up having the most stuff when he dies wins. And I don't quite agree with that. I want stuff I just don't want stuff hanging around. I want stuff that I can use.
Absolutely. Yeah. Exactly.
So do you have a garage there?
Yeah, kind of. We live on a property. There's a friend of mine, his name's Mike Nappy. He's a King of the Hammers racer, and he's got that RMB 4x4 shop in LaSalle Junction. So, yeah, I help him out when he needs an extra hand around the shop, and especially on like this older stuff that's now starting to come in broken from Moab, trail repairs, So, and he lets me use the shop a little bit here and there. So.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah.
And that gives you a place to store some of the cars, because I'm sure you have more than just the what are you driving now?
Definitely multiple things. Yeah, we live in Moab, technically homeless, and have 9 vehicles. Actually 10 now. We have 10 now. I got to count the new Golden Eagle too. So
there you go.
But, yeah, right now my Wheeling Willys, which was kind of a trade-in, it's not really powered and ready to be driving back and forth to Moab on the highway. So I've got a little $300 beater Ranger I've been going back and forth to town with on the highway. That's a little more safer. It's a little harder for the semis to run over me in that truck. So
right.
If I don't do that, it's 2 hours to get to town on dirt in the Willys. So which is fun, but it's not always, what I need to be doing. So
right, not real convenient.
No, it's
and
not.
from LaSalle Junction, do you cross over the highway then, and then 191, and then go out, or are you staying on that east side?
To get into town on dirt,
Yeah.
yeah, that's going to be, we just go right across Highway 46, and then there's
okay.
there's a road called Browns Hole Road, and it goes all the way to area BFE, and then you pass BFE and come out. You can come out on the highway there, but of course I don't. I go next to the highway and come down what they call Yellow Circle.
Right.
And that's where a lot of people camp, and that's kind of the staging area for the old Strike Ravine Trail. And then just come in Spanish Valley down there. Yeah, I timed it. It's about 2 hours, no matter how you slice it. It just can't go any faster than that in anything I own right now.
Right.
I think Nappy can do it a lot faster in his V8 Cherokee with the big shocks for sure.
I can imagine. I can imagine.
I can't hang with that yet.
So I tried taking that road you're talking about, and
yeah,
there was a winter where Shelly and I lived at Danny Grimes' house, Grandpa's garage.
Yeah, cool.
And it was like 90 days or so we were in Moab, and we tried to go that back road, and I got to an area where there was just signs all over the place that said private property, no trespassing. And it looked like they were trying to keep you from going down the main road.
Yep.
And I know that it was probably the properties on either side of the road. But at that point, I just turned around and came back. But that's probably the road that you're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely it is. Yeah, and I've tried it myself before I really knew what the route was. Before I met the guys, before I met Nappy and his friends out there at the junction, they told me exactly how to do it. And they said, yeah, don't worry about those signs. You'll pass through all that and eventually have to open some gates and stuff. It looks really rural, but eventually it turns into the road. Yeah.
Oh, so there's gates and everything you have to open and close.
Oh, yeah. That's the common thing out here is just there's free range cattle gates everywhere. And if you don't really know that, unless that actual gate says private property, you can always go through them. You just put them back. But
right. Leave them as you found them.
Yeah. Back in Missouri, that's not the case. It's all private property and you'll get shot.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
It took me a while to get over that whole, programmed fear of getting shot and being on private property to, be able to explore this public land out here that we have. But that's the whole reason we moved out here was, that we ran out of stuff to run in Missouri. There's like 3 parks and that's about it.
Right.
The rest is private. Here we can just, tool around for hours out in the middle of nowhere.
So when you were back in Missouri and you had your first couple of cars, how did you get into wheeling?
That's a funny situation. So I'm from a, split up family, and my mom had bought a cabin down in this little valley, and the driveway was just a goat path to get into it. So in Missouri, in the Ozarks, the hills aren't really that tall compared to mountains, but I'll tell you what, they are straight up and down steep. And there was like 2 times I had the old Camaro down in there, second Camaro, and getting it stuck, burning the tires off in the gravel and whatnot, and finally I'm like, I needed some kind of 4-wheel drive. My mom had a Bronco 2 stick shift. She drove up and down it, no problem. And that wasn't really for me, but, went back to one of the car lots that I used to work at. And there was a bright red, shiny CJ7 Laredo 1986 model with a 4-speed Dana 44 rear, and had to trade in the old 89 RS Camaro for that bad boy. And I never looked back on that. I've always had a 4-wheel drive as either a primary or second or third vehicle at all times now.
Nice. Okay.
It was basically like wheeling every day. Yeah, totally out of necessity.
And once you had that 4-wheel drive freedom, did you do start a lot of exploring then?
Yeah, as much as you really can in that area. There was a lot of undeveloped land and subdivisions that weren't finished, or the whatever went under, and so there was a little bit of wheeling to be done there, but a lot of it was just mud running and whatnot. If there was any kind of events, that's what it was. So we did get into some mud racing for a while, and That's fun for a while, but after so many years of washing out mud and broken seals and nastiness, that's the fun wears off. So now I try to avoid mud at any cost whatsoever.
I agree. I hate mud.
Yeah,
Shout out
I
to
got
Woody.
exactly. Yep, I hate mud.com. Still relevant. Absolutely.
Yes.
Yep.
So let's talk about how you got into the the want of stepping away from being, a regular job and going after the book, doing the periodical. And what's the whole story behind that, and talk about what the periodical is.
Yeah. So, I've always loved telling stories. And I love listening to stories. Love, people that can tell them. And even from early on, man, in high school, I'd had, supposed to do a report on such and such. And I ended up, would write a paper about a wheeling trip that we did that weekend because I was just obsessed. About the time JP magazine became a thing, I had gotten my first Jeep and I was in high school reading those books, those magazines all the time and following, of course, Rick and everybody's adventures back then. And I always said, in my back of my head, one day when I retire, when I'm done working, I'm going to write, articles for the magazines. I don't care who it is or what it's about. Hopefully it's for JP, but that continued up until we moved to Moab. I had to tell my wife, yeah, it's getting close. We can retire and I can, sit on the beach in Baja and write magazine articles, for JP. And, not 2019 came around and, everybody's getting bought out and, folding. And it's like, wow, now my retirement plan has totally changed. I'm going to have to do something here completely different. So, a bunch
Pivot.
of
You needed to pivot, huh?
yeah, I'm like, this is time to do something now. Of course, COVID hit and I was just kind of not really out of work, but it was slowed way down because the tourists couldn't come to town. So I decided to just do something on my own.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because Moab absolutely shut down. They just told everybody, we don't want anybody here.
yeah, absolutely. There was locals that were fighting campers out at Kins Lake, fist fights over get out of our town. And it was just madness. And so we just kind of hung back in our little house, that came with my job, was part of it. And it was like, we need to get out of this house that is attached to this job that I don't really like anymore. And there's, what happens if, town shuts down again, because it was all uncertain. We didn't know.
Right.
So it was time to make the leap.
And you did. The school bus.
Yeah. Yep. Decided, time to move to the school bus so we can cut back on rent. Every place to rent around here is, $1,000 a room. So if you want a 3-bedroom house, that's on, $3,000 a month. So that's why everybody's got 2 and 3 jobs. And that just wasn't, that takes, all of our adventure time out and all the fun of why we moved to Moab to begin with. It wasn't to move in here and work 24 hours a day.
Well, and that's the thing with Moab is that I know everybody always has it's so common to see help wanted signs. And
yeah,
everybody I talk to that has a business in Moab says that, people come to work, as soon as they get their first paycheck, maybe 2, then they disappear.
Yep. That's a fact.
And it's hard to keep gainful employment or keep your business running with that kind of employment because you're constantly having to try to teach people to do what you want them to do, and then they disappear because they're on the river or they're they're living climbing cliffs or bicycling or something.
Absolutely.
They don't want to. They're there to party or to adventure, not to. And then the other thing that drives me nuts is when you see all those people that maybe live on the river rats or the cliff dwellers. There you go. It was hard to say. When they get down to City Market and they peruse and munch, it's like
Yep.
they're grazing.
Yeah,
Nobody actually
exactly.
buys anything.
Right. Yeah, we call those freegans.
Freegans.
Yeah. And they're the ones that steal the salt off the tables, and the hot sauce off the table, whatnot, the restaurant.
Yeah, I saw a
Was
guy in there one time, and he was buying mushrooms, and he broke off all the stems and took just the caps.
Well, that's a very Moab thing to hear about for sure. Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
another time, having some guy, there was like 3 or 4 people standing there. You could tell that they were living on the river, and they had by the way they were dressed and stuff, and they
Sure.
they all had something to eat, and they were sharing it amongst themselves. And I just stood there and stared at them. And the guy noticed me staring, and he holds the bag of chips open to me and goes, "Here, you want some?" Like, that's why I was staring at him, that I wanted some of his chips. And I was like, thanks, but no thanks, man. Whatever. And I just walked off. I couldn't understand it. And the employees are just walking right past them. They're non-confrontational.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. No, that's some of those people just, they don't even care with their job either. They're just kind of there to get their paycheck. And it's so many things are, left in shambles in these, stores and whatnot, just because people don't care. They're just hanging out to get a check. But,
Yep.
a lot of those people are just kind of nomads, and they go back and forth to all these different places, like, whatever, Jackson Hole, or, down to Joshua Tree, and they'll go to different places in the different seasons. So you'll see the same people, but they're never here all the time.
Right. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Which, winter's pretty tough in Moab. It can get pretty gloomy and pretty cold for a long time, it seems. And looking at spots in Baja and whatnot, that's still on our radar to get out of this funk during the wintertime. It can get pretty rough.
I did enjoy our winter there, though, because there was
Mm-hmm.
nobody on the trails.
Yeah.
And you could start off in the morning and go do a trail, and by 2:00 you've got a foot of snow that you're trying to get out of to get back.
Sure.
But it was fun. I enjoyed it. Except there really was nobody to wheel with.
No, you're really on your own, and you got to really plan ahead and be mindful of what you're going to do, because you can get yourself in a really bad situation in the wintertime around here.
Right.
People always say, there's no mud in Moab. Well, you're not here when the mud is here, and you don't go to the places where the mud is. And the mud is no joke out here. That's the last time I took my willies out, I got stuck in mud and had to walk 6 miles. I'm starting a new YouTube channel, and that was my first videos, were me going out, on our little adventure doing that and walking home at dusk, going back and getting the Super Cherokee to pull us out, but it's unforgiving for sure. If it had been in wintertime, that would have been a whole different story and situation that we probably wouldn't have been laughing about all day long.
Right, because some of those creek bottoms and stuff that that don't flow at all when most people are there, they end up becoming like quicksand.
Absolutely, they will. Yeah. Yep. We had crossed over a little stream, tiny stream, probably 2 foot wide at the most, and maybe a foot deep. And we'd crossed this snowmelt runoff stream probably 7 times throughout the day. And we were headed back towards R&B 4x4 where we live. And the last time we crossed it, that thing was probably 2 foot wide and 3 feet deep. And it absolutely swallowed both front tires, put my winch into the mud. Like, I had to dig the winch totally out of the mud to be able to use it, try it out, which, didn't work because there was just sagebrush everywhere. I don't have a dead man or like a pull pal or anything, but didn't expect to have to use it. You cross that creek so many times during the day, you're fine. You get complacent by the end of the day.
Right. So let's talk some more about the book and what kind of articles that you put into it, and what it really is all about. So, give me your elevator pitch, you might say.
Yeah, it's just a periodical to follow along all of us crazy flat fender guys, which I will say are a different breed of off-roader. And we got adventure stories in there, tech articles that are, pretty much tailored to the Willie's stuff only. And I try to keep, like a lot of my friends that I've met out here since I've moved out, they make products for these Willies. So I try to, kind of push these grassroots products and go from there. We've got little bit of humor here and there. We got RJ in the back that makes up a story with a vintage picture, the eBay for sale, and I'll buy it and send it to him, and he just comes up with the silliest stuff. And it's just a good snapshot of us flat fender guys and what we love.
And what are some of the stories that you can tell me about some of these different breed of wheelers, the guys that love the flat fenders? I know a lot of them already, but
Yeah.
I would imagine you being, one of the locals there that's into the flat fenders. Whenever they come into town, you're on their hit list.
A lot of times. And then of course it's became to where, we got little cliques nowadays, and not everybody communicates with everybody all the time. So some guys will show up into town and I don't even know they're going to be here. And then we meet up. But yeah, I always say, you got to have a love for pain and suffering if you're going to be a flat fender driver. So that's for sure.
My first Jeep was a 46, and but it had a 215 all aluminum. It's like the Buick or Pontiac motor. That
Absolutely.
was a screaming little V8. Oh my God, that thing screamed.
Those are great engines for a flat fender for sure. And just that's a real good, 60s, 70s period swap kind of thing for sure. I think those are kind of like the Land Rover motor. They took the design too and ran with that for some of theirs also.
Yeah, they actually bought the design from Rover, bought that, and that's that 3.8 that they still use.
Yeah, such an awesome motor, still in use. So cool. That's a rad first Jeep for sure.
No roll cage, and I had it I bought it when I was in Cedar City, and we were out there at Three Peaks all the time, and everything on it was stock except for that engine I don't even think that there was anything else besides the engine that wasn't. Everything else was stock, and I put like 33s on it, and would tear up all the steering and everything all the time, but dropping off with no, just a windshield and a B hoop, and
yep.
I was doing some pretty stupid things. And there's a picture that I've got somewhere that just shows us leaning back in the seats as it's standing on the front bumper, just hoping it doesn't go all the way over. And I was like, I thought I was going to die that day.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it still lives on, that kind of stuff, and through Sean Smith and all of us for sure. Him more famously than all of us, because he just wheels all the time with no roll bar. But my Jeeps come with a roll bar, usually end up when I buy them. So I just kind of leave them in there. Except for the Go Devil run, we don't ever, do anything technical enough. I guess if you crashed in the ditch at speed, you'd be in pretty bad shape, but there's never anything like you're talking about with the standing on the nose and with the come to Jesus moment. There's none of that going on in that run. So,
right. I can remember coming across Eric Fillar on Behind the Rocks, and it's that first climb that I'd call it a gatekeeper climb. And he was up there with his flat fender, and I pulled up in the Cherokee, and I just couldn't get over the edge. And I said, "Hey, you want to spot me?" And just come a little more driver. And it started to climb, and he says, "Okay, now turn passenger," and it went right up. So now I know the line on that thing. But there was no getting out. There's no getting out on that and trying to figure out what you're going to do unless you get it all the way back down to the bottom.
For sure. No, you can get in a tight spot on that trail for sure in anything. Doesn't matter what size it is.
Yeah. And watching Ryan Miller drive down with his little rally Jeep that they built for Kaylee to do the Rebel in, and driving off a high dive, I was like, "You're an idiot, dude." there's there's no way I wouldn't drive anything down that. I
Right.
put on hardcore events, but I'm not a hardcore wheeler.
Right. Yeah. It just, you don't know. It just happens. That's for sure. That we get those little flat fenders in these predicaments, and if you don't, it's funny because there's a special magical formula of the size and power to weight ratio and all of that in a stock one. You put two lockers in it, and they're just unstoppable. Small tires, doesn't affect your your crawl ratios that are factory and whatnot, but if you start to deviate from that, you have to pretty much commit and go all the way to,
Right.
yeah, you got to pretty much go in between. Doesn't really work. It's either big tires, big motor, big axles, or you keep it stock. In between, it just doesn't really work that good.
I don't think that most people nowadays, because the guys, and I'm talking about the people that came into wheeling with the JKs,
Yep.
they don't understand that the flat fenders, the suspension is all built into the frame. I mean,
Right.
those
Yeah.
little tiny springs, that you're running on, those old military, wrap springs and all that kind of stuff, and sprung
Yeah.
under and everything, is not what gives you your suspension travel. It's the frame twisting.
Yeah. That frame twists a lot, and you don't notice it until you get all bound up, and all of a sudden your clutch doesn't work.
Exactly.
The gas pedal's all in a weird spot now, and yeah, that's the big thing with it. And like I said, it's either got to be fully boxed and rigid, or else it's got to be able to flex really good.
Agreed. And
Yeah.
so how do people get involved in if they wanted um to get your book, and how often does it come out?
So I've really not had a set schedule on, just basically because of how uncertain everything is around Moab, and after all the COVID problems and stuff. I didn't really want to set, hey, it's going to be every month at this time exactly, we're going to have the book ready, because it just doesn't work like that right now for me and some other people. So we just pretty much put them together as we can get them done. And it's, if we have content or not, that all kind of plays into it also. So my
Creating
life was
content can be a pain in the butt.
oh, absolutely it is. And some of my friends, that contribute, I'm like, you guys are putting out these amazing posts on social media and stuff, tech stuff or whatever, that's kind of profound, and then it just gets lost in the algorithm. I'm like, let's just put this in paper so that, things like when Photo Bucket decides they're not going to do the, pictures for everybody anymore on the forums, which was a big thing back in the pirate days.
Oh yes.
I'm like, let's save this stuff before Facebook implodes, because that's not going to be around forever. I don't really think it could be, but I don't know.
Yeah, I've got everything that I have on Facebook archived.
Yeah, you got to in multiple places.
Yes.
I made some bad jokes that the Zuckerberg didn't like, and he deleted my entire account, last year. So I had to
Wow.
start over again with my new account. So
That's why I don't do like those reels things and things like that, because because you
hmm
do it live on there, you don't have the content anymore.
no, and that's why I'll post my Instagram, and it does a reel that'll transfer over to Facebook that disappears, but it's always in my Instagram, so that's good. I do see that app staying around a lot longer. It's not nearly as controversial with the politics and all
True.
that stuff. So
True, but it's
it's
still
more.
owned by Meta.
That's
So
true. Yep.
so then what is it a hardcover or is it a magazine style?
So it's, yeah, I wanted what they call a perfect bound book. So it's got a nice thick glossy cover that's you know laminated together with a hard edge on the spine.
Right.
And honestly, I wanted to have someone locally in Moab do it. And I, talked to the local print shop, and they said, no, we can do a spiral bound, or we can do this, little less quality paper for the cover. And I looked at what they had, like a diner's guide or like a coupon book. I'm like, nobody's, they might buy it, but this isn't something that somebody's going to leave on the, table for a while and be like really neat looking. So I ran into a guy in Grand Junction, Colorado, 2 hours away, one man, operation print shop. And he's like, oh yeah, I can definitely do this for you. And I really appreciate, what you're doing with trying to keep print alive. So he's been a really big help this entire time and kind of taught me the process of being a publisher and stuff like that, which, I had absolutely no idea what that entailed until I did a little Google research on that and decided, hey, you apply for an LLC and, do the legwork on finding a printer and you're a publisher. So
right. That's
Yeah.
basically what happened to us when we purchased For Low and started
Sure.
publishing it. We took it over at issue 17 was our first one. And it was,
Okay.
when the guy we bought it from, the intention was to keep him on as an editor, and that wasn't going to work out. We found out right away. And
Yeah.
because he still wanted to run it the way he was running it, which obviously is why he had to sell it. So it was like,
Sure.
okay, we're gonna make some changes, and he kind of flipped out on that. So all of a sudden we're like, okay, we got to figure this out. And luckily we contacted a few people that we know that are in publishing and said, okay, what do we need to do? And we had a big learning curve. I should say my wife Shelley had a huge learning curve. I just make suggestions, and I shoot some of the pictures and write a few of the articles, but she does all the hard work. And, every 2 months we got to have that magazine out. And that deadline section there, for 2 weeks while we're putting it all together is crazy.
Absolutely. It really is too. It is.
And without having friends to help out with the articles and understand what we're trying to do, it couldn't be done. The magazine industry as it used to be is, it'll never go back to that. I don't think.
I don't think it will either. No,
print.
I don't.
No. And
sure.
And it's one of those things that, it's a labor of love. It's without having the friends helping out with doing the articles and stuff, there's no way that we could pay for the articles to be done right now, at least the way, that the model of the magazine industry in the past.
Sure. Yeah.
The money's just not there.
No, it's not. It's not. We make all of our money. Bread and butter is on our T-shirts, stickers, mugs, and all the little swag that we sell on our website. That's where we live on for sure, which is definitely still not much.
Right.
But
it's difficult. And so what is, how much are you charging for when you do put out an issue?
Well, right now they're at $15 with your postage included. Of course, unless it's, overseas, then they have to pay the shipping costs. But, it's selling 8 countries, so they're going all over the place. But,
Nice.
Eventually we're going to have to bring the price up because literally, I want to say postage has went up 4 or 5 times since we've started this.
What we found is it's the paper
yeah,
costs.
paper.
And we're doing the same thing. We've got a heavier cover, heavier pages on the inside, and the cost.
Yep.
I think the last issue we just put out, this issue 51, there was no price increase on the paper, and it was like, wow, that's the first time. Every issue for since 2009, the end of 2019, every issue they've raised the price of production.
Absolutely. Yeah. Last year we couldn't even get the paper that we wanted it took forever. And at the print shop, I'm the only one that uses that stuff. So
Wow.
My printer, Mark, he'll order these, boxes of paper just for me only for my next book. So we got 9 books out so far. And, it was going to be, by season, but I've gotten to where I'm just going to number them now. Issue 10 is the one we're working on now. So
Excellent.
Yeah.
And so they can go to, anybody that's interested in that could go to flatfendering.com and do that.
Yeah. Yeah. As long as our pre-order's open, and if we have back issues that are available, then we'll have those there too for sale. And those are usually, buy and ship kind of things, unless they do a big package order with, and waiting on the other books and stuff. But yeah, that's where we sell everything. And social media, as much as I hate it, 90% of the time, that's our best advertising route right now still.
Oh, I agree. Just today we got my issue 51s showed up to the house here. So I broke one out and did a preview video. And, every time I do a preview video, the first day, we get a bunch of new subscriptions, and then it tapers off, and then I repost it, and then we get, some more subscriptions, and and then you have people that fall off that go, hey, I didn't sign up for this for an extra year. I just wanted 1 year, type thing. It's like, all right, fine, whatever. But support. All I got to say to people out there is support these small magazines, print magazines, if you can. There's your magazine, there's ours with Four Low, John Herrick's with Crawl. There's very few out there that aren't have turned into the bigger publications. The Overlanding Journal and all those others. Those things are huge and they're expensive, and they've got a good following. The Overlanding is
that's huge.
It's a huge part of the business nowadays. So
that's the hot thing.
So anybody out there listening to this, if you're not subscribing to print magazines, think about it. Please do, because there's quite a few of us out there that are trying to make this keep it alive. So people should be willing to spend that. With us, it's $24 a year. I mean, come on, for 6 issues.
Right. Yeah, no, that's good stuff, and like I said, it's always going to be around. When the internet crashes for a minute, you can still go over there and pick that up and be entertained for, the evening, where now it's just like you have to twiddle your thumbs, if the internet goes out.
Exactly. Nobody knows what to do in the bathroom anymore.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, that's why I made my issues are so small. That way, they fit good on the back of a toilet tank or in somebody's ammo can in their Jeep. You could take them anywhere. Put them in your lunchbox. Yep, absolutely.
So let's talk about a little bit about the the Go Devil run and some of the runs you guys do. I know Jackman does the vintage Jeep rallies up in Idaho. I think it is. Isn't that what he calls it?
Idaho. Yeah, he does the Idaho Vintage Jeep Rally, which, he's kind of started doing it about the same time as the Go Devil run. And he's like, there's not going to be any rules. This is cutting out everybody. He wants everybody to come and have fun, but just, be vintage enough to where it's just not all flat fenders for his run. You'll see, full size Cherokee 2-doors. You'll see CJ 5s and 7s will come along, and Commandos and all that kind of stuff. So he's a little less, he's got no rules. So anybody can come, and it's really fun. Go Devil Run, that's its own separate thing. People,
the purists,
it's not even really like a regular trail run, like a Trail Hero or something like that. It's more of a reenactment that the people do with like the World War II stuff. Get dressed up in your period correct costumes and go out and have all your period correct camping gear and recreate these things that are being lost and forgotten.
Yeah, we did an article on a couple of years ago on one of the Go Devil runs, and it was actually done by Ryan Miller, and all the photos are in black and white.
It's the way it should be. Absolutely. And they look great. I mean, I think it was like the first one. So a lot of people didn't have, their full costume, and the Jeeps weren't exactly perfect. Mine definitely wasn't, but I tried to hide the modern mods and stuff as good as I could, to where people almost, couldn't recognize my Jeep. They could not believe that it transformed into a big tire trail crawler into a stalker that looked like it was, from the 1950s. So it's a lot of fun to be able to do that and, bring back. That's another section of, automotive history that's not really talked about or covered. It was what everybody did, after the war with these surplus Jeeps. What they do, they, painted them funky colors and got out and started exploring around and having fun with them. It's a different kind of freedom that back then that was kind of harder to find, but the Jeep lets you get out in the backcountry.
They created an industry. They didn't know
Absolutely.
it at the time.
Yep. That's where anything nowadays that's off-road, Jeep or whatever, that's all stems from those days and those guys. And, a lot of them were connected. You'll see them in these old vintage pictures. It's like I forget a guy that started Hot Rod magazine or something, or NHRA or something like that. And he was, in the war putting a V8 in his Flat Fender MB, hot rodding around. That right there is the first step into the off-road industry,
Correct. And now it's amazing because, with the evolution of Jeeps, I mean, it used to be, when you were going to upgrade your suspension, you just added more Rancho shocks.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Or some ag tires, that would float better on the sand and whatnot.
Yep.
But,
and,
we ran across, there was a Life magazine article, and it was, what's funny is it was a trail ride that they did to promote a paved route to Anza Borrego and somewhere else. And nowadays we'll do that kind of trail ride to try and keep a trail unpaved, but they all got together, and this Life magazine collection of pictures were just everybody in these old, GPs and MBs and all command cars and all these Army surplus rigs, brand new CJ2As, and they're just cruising across the desert looking like they're having a great time, So me and Ian were talking one night, and he's like, I'm thinking about doing a trail ride down here in Arizona. It's like, in Flat Fenders only. I'm like, that'd be awesome. How about if we, make everybody have, old camping gear and, all the old clothes and stuff that they wore back then, and try to make it look exactly like these pictures we ran across. And it just took off from there.
That's cool. That's cool. And so, I didn't ask Ian this because it was when I interviewed him, but the Go Devil runs, is he only going to do those in Arizona, or is he going to expand those to other locations? Do you know?
I think the original Go Devil run that he puts on is probably always going to be in the Arizona area. I mean, there's so much to explore over there that's, Flat Fender, friendly, that, you see a lot of the coverage of four-wheel drive stuff down there, and it's just extreme rock crawling crazy. But there's so much other stuff that's just historic roads and towns and ghost towns that, are perfect for tooling around in a Flat Fender all day long.
Right. No, I agree totally, because I've done a lot of roads down there, but, either in my XJ or in the Raptor, and
Sure.
like the Arizona Peace Trail and all the offshoots of, so many of the offshoots out there on that. There's
Absolutely.
some pretty cool epic stuff out there. Well,
it really is.
I want to say thank you so much for coming on and spending some time and making yourself available. I know you had to come into town to get cell service, and I appreciate you making that effort so that we could talk and chat. And I want to make sure that everybody, checks out Flat Fendering Aficionado. You got a Facebook page. You can go to flatfendering.com and, stay abreast on it. If you're into flat fenders at all, or the history, start buying the books and supporting print, please. Digital is great, but it's nothing like what you can touch. It's always there for you, always good as a reference material. And so, Travis, thank you so much. And next time I'm out in Moab, we're gonna have to get together.
Absolutely, yeah. You know where I'll be parked at too. It'll be right there at the LaSalle Junction at Mike Nappy's campground. So
absolutely, excellent. Well, thank you so much for coming on and spending some time.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate it. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Well, that's another episode of Conversations with Big Rich. I'd like to thank you all for listening. If you could do us a favor and leave us a review on any podcast service that you happen to be listening on, or send us an email or a text message or a Facebook message, and let me know any ideas that you have, or if there's anybody that you have that you think would be a great guest, please forward the contact information to me so that we can try to get them on. And always remember, live life to the fullest. Enjoying life is a must. Follow your dreams and live life with all the gusto you can. Thank you.